Hey guys, it's Christine, also known as IvyWinter. Thank you for joining me for another Disney video. So my last video I did my top 5 queues, and instead of just doing my top 5 worst queues, I actually wanted to cover the top 5 worst queues for really great rides. So these are queues that are just like really lackluster that culminate into a really fantastic ride that you almost feel like the ride does not deserve as crappy of a queue as it got. It was really fun to kind of think this through because I think there's a few of these at Disney World personally. And it's kind of a shame because these rides deserve better if you ask me. My number 5 is Slinky Dog Dash. Especially coming off of my last video where I said I love Toy Story Mania's queue, how it references a lot of things to the movies, but also has that nostalgia of being a kid and growing up with those toys. On the flip side, Slinky Dog Dash just doesn't have much going for it. Granted, it's an outdoor queue. I like some of the stuff. Like actually like the blueprints and stuff when you are boarding the ride, and there's obviously some ads for like Slinky Dog as a product, but there isn't much to look at. It isn't all that interesting. I guess the best thing about it is that the queue's outside, the ride's outside, so you can watch it pass as you're waiting. But it's kind of disappointing for what I think is such a great ride. A ride that I actually sort of like Seven Dwarfs put off for a while because I thought, it's just a kid coaster. And then when I finally rode it, I was like, Christine, you're a dummy. This is a great ride. Both daytime and nighttime, great experiences. But I just don't think that the queue lives up to the ride. My number 4, Rock and Roller Coaster. What a god-awful queue for a fantastic ride. First of all, the outside part, forget it. It's not even worth mentioning. It's not interesting. There's nothing to look at. It's so boring. You finally get into the building and you've got that awful marble doors that kids love to just roll and just makes the most obnoxious noise ever. And forget it, once a kid realizes that they can do it, it will just be nonstop because then the kid behind them realizes they can do it, and then it just keeps going. Also, gross, germs. So that drives me crazy. You end up in that little rotunda area with the different posters that used to, at least, I don't even know if they still do. I feel like sometimes they do, sometimes they don't work. But they did that whole like RFID thing where they would take your name and they would be like, you know, they would do a concert poster and use your name in it. But I feel like that's only working part of the time. Otherwise, they just kind of put up ads for, I don't know, like really random B artists in there that they actually have on their record labels. And then you get further in, and again, there's just nothing to really see or look at. There's just, there's just nothing there. And I feel like it's a shame because everything leading up to the pre-show is just not interesting at all. And then even after the pre-show, the only reason that queue gets any more interesting when you're in the back alley part is because you can watch the ride launch. I don't feel like there's anything else within that back alley design that's that interesting. There's a couple of cute Aerosmith song references, but other than that, I don't think that it has a lot going for it, and I think the ride is so good, but like, man, is it lacking in queue. It's like they just kind of slapped it together, and I think they could have just done so much more with it. Number 3 is Test Track, and I'm thinking of the newer Test Track. I just feel, again, there's not a lot to look at. It has what Rob always says is that Stark Expo vibe, which isn't a bad thing. I like the cool blues and the music and like all of that, but there just isn't much to look at or interact with until you get up to the part where you are building your car. There are things of like these like futuristic car designs, which I guess are interesting, but I feel like they can make more interesting, right? I don't think that there's something that people like care about much. When I think to this queue, my memories of it are playing heads up with other people that I'm with because it's just such a boring queue. Like there's just nothing to look at. There's just nothing that's like enticing you or telling you anything else about the ride. It's just kind of blah for Again, what I think is a really, really fun ride, and I think obviously the big part for me with the ride is that customizable car. But leading up to that, there's nothing really going on, and after that, there's nothing really going on until you actually get on the ride. I just don't think it's a really good queue. My number 2 is Rise of the Resistance. Now, I am talking about the actual like first part of the queue before you even get to the first pre-show thing, and like not including anything after that, with no spoilers. There is a later queue, I'll put it that way. If you've ridden it, you know what I'm talking about, which is great. They did that in an interesting way because there's some interaction with cast members. But I'm talking prior to that. I'm talking about that first queue that you get into. It is really boring. So boring, I can't really tell you that I remember much in it, just that it was like caves and that there were some built-in benches, which I thought was a great idea for people to sit down. I've read the book about Black Spire, so now I understand what those caves are and the story behind them, but even still, it doesn't make it any more interesting. I remember being really windy and really boring, and I remember seeing people on like personal, like, you know, electric vehicles and wheelchairs having a really hard time getting through this queue. So I think that also docks a lot for me as well. But in terms of theming, it's just, there's nothing there. It's pretty boring. And the reason why it's my number 2 is because it's so boring for such a phenomenal ride. Like, to me, best ride on property, best ride in a theme park ever. And yet, that first part is just really boring. My number 1 worst queue for what is a really good ride. Not like a personal favorite, but a good ride. I'll let you take a minute because I feel like a lot of people think of this as well. Is Soarin'. What the heck is that, guys? You walk in, it's just like, I don't know, like I walk into like I don't know. Like I don't even know how to describe it. Like I'm walking through, like the carpeting and the walls and the handrails reminds me of like if I was walking through, I don't know, just like a hotel floor. Not even a lobby, just like when you're going to your room and it's like a bland Super 8 hotel with like weird carpeting, nothing to look at. It's such a strange queue. They could have done so much more with the theme of Soarin'. Could have made it more like an airport. I don't know, something more interesting. I know they have that trivia that you can like play on your phone, and I guess it's fine, except now my experience, I've never really been backed up that far in the queue to really play it. It also doesn't mean much. Like throughout the day, the teams are up and down and whatever, and there's no real winner or anything. But that queue is so boring. None of it, not a single part of it is interesting. Not all the way up until, you know, basically getting on the ride. There's nothing there. That's like literally how I feel about it. There's just nothing there. It's a very bizarre queue for what I think could have had like really, really cool theming. So it's kind of a shame. And like Soarin' isn't my favorite ride ever, but I think it's a great ride. I think it's very novel, and I think it deserved a little bit more than what it got. So those are my top 5 worst queues for really great rides. I would love to know yours in the comments below. What queues do you think are just really not good, but the ride is great? Let me know. If you like this video, then like it. If you like me, you should subscribe. I make videos every single week-ish. And I appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, in the description below, you can find the Discord channel if you want to chat with like-minded Disney fans. You can find the TTA podcast if you want to listen to the podcast that I do with Rob of Midway to Main Street. Thank you so much for watching. As always, have a great rest of the day. Bye.